Hey everyone, and welcome to the Wide World of Wrestling podcast. We are here for the debut episode of the Pod Champs. We've been talking about this for weeks now. Today is finally here for the Pod Champs. Uh, Joining me is Mr. Jacobs. Me and him brought this show to be. We came up with this. How are you doing, Mr. Jacobs?
I'm doing awesome. I'm happy to finally be getting this show off the ground. We've been talking about it for so long, and we're finally here. Thank you all for tuning in for the first episode of the Pod Champs. We appreciate it.
Yeah, tonight's episode will be about our wrestling fandom. Pretty basic episode. I thought this was the perfect topic to begin this new show, introducing ourselves as someone. Any of you don't know any of us, know a little bit about our how we got into wrestling and who our favorite wrestlers are, stories, and all sorts of stuff like that. We will probably have some more people joining us throughout the show. But yeah, I want to thank everyone for watching. We've already got a few people in the comments, but yeah, I guess I'll let you go first, Ms. Jacobs. So, for anyone that does not know you, uh, how did you get into wrestling?
Wow, I mean, it's decades long kind of love affair with wrestling. With me, I started when I was probably about 8 years old. I guess I would say, yeah, about eight. And this is before they had Monday Night Raw, so I couldn't watch it like all the time like we do today. Uh, like I'll watch it sporadically, and like once Monday Night Raw hit, I was able to actually, watch it on a weekly basis and get a better I guess feel of the storylines. Because before then, I mean, you can get the storylines, but as a kid, it was hard. It was hard keeping up with it because they didn't have a consistent show at the time. But yeah, once Monday Night Raw started, I mean, that's when I was hooked. I was there every week, and like I had to be a part of like what was going on, like what was going to happen next. And I think for me as a kid, I think the character that kind of sealed the deal for me was the Undertaker. I mean, because I would see characters off and on, and but none of them really caught my eye up until the Undertaker. I mean, there's Hulk Hogan and everybody like that, but it was like it was once I got the hold of the Undertaker, that was it. I knew I was gonna love this crazy thing called professional wrestling forever, and that's what started my, I guess you could say, love affair with professional wrestling.
Yeah, I started watching wrestling majorly in the Ruthless Aggression era. That's when I really started watching wrestling first. But when I really started watching wrestling, it wasn't the current wrestling. My dad had all these old VHS tapes. Uh, and the first wrestler I really liked was The Undertaker. For whatever reason, The Undertaker stood out to me. Normally, people would say Stone Cold or The Rock, but it was The Undertaker. I really, really liked The Undertaker. Then I went to like one of my favorite wrestlers of all time was Jeff Hardy. That someone in the Ruthless Aggression era. That's someone I really, really enjoyed. Uh, but when I really started watching wrestling, a lot of people say WWE, but for me, the show that I really watched weekly was TNA. That was the show that I feel like I watched the most. Like I watched WWE, but what I was most invested in was TNA. And I would only get to watch TNA at my grandmother's house because we didn't get it at my house. Uh, the only wrestling show I got at where I was living at the time when I was a kid was SmackDown, and they were on
Yeah,
Fox. Uh, Guys like Jeff Hardy were on there. Uh, Edge. I think that's when Edge and the Undertaker had their big feud. Uh,
mm-hmm.
every time John Cena was on SmackDown, every once in a while, that'd be a big deal. Uh, but I got to watch Memphis Wrestling. That was a local thing. That and SmackDown was the only wrestling I got to watch besides buying VHS and DVDs. Uh, but I feel like once I watched TNA, that kind of got me hooked. Uh, Mainly guys like AJ Styles and Samoa Joe. But the
Right.
first wrestler I can really say that I really liked was The Undertaker. I believe the first match I ever saw of his was Undertaker versus Mankind. It was when I believe they burned Undertaker's face, storyline wise. Then the Undertaker had to wear that mask or whatever that he wore for a
Yeah, I
while.
know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, that I feel like that's the first one I saw. of his. I think that was In Your House, when they were doing those shows. Uh, but yeah, we've also talked about a few wrestlers. But who are some of your favorite wrestlers growing up?
I think for me, I mean, because it was like a time where, well, I mean, well, I still feel this way. There's a time where I felt like I was more into the heels than the baby faces. You know, like one heel that one of my favorite heels of all time was Macho Man, because like he was always that that I guess that constant battle with Hulk Hogan that was always like because everybody knows that Macho Man was always better than Hulk Hogan. Everybody knows that,
Yeah.
but it's like at that time Macho Man was probably one of the biggest heels in the company. Whenever I like first started watching, Macho Man was like one of the hugest heels, and like for me, it's always been like people like King Kong Bundy was one of my favorites too growing up because he was just such a huge dude for no damn reason, and like and the thing is it wasn't like he really had a gimmick. He was just a big dude, but I was like I was enamored by these huge villains throwing people around, like Andre the Giant and stuff like that. I mean, I that's the kind of era I started watching him, and and like to this day, I still enjoy more of the heels than I do the baby faces. Like I feel for Stone Cold because of the fact that he's like the everyday guy, fighting the man, and that's one of those things that another thing that got me into you know you know regularly watching wrestling was the stories.
Yeah.
It's no different from watching Young and the Restless sit there beating the hell out of each other, and it's fun and
Yeah.
it's entertaining. It's one of the best shows on earth next to the circus.
Yeah. For me, I always here we got someone else. We got Jason Ingram here with us. Uh,
Oh, welcome, Jason.
What's happening, man?
I guess I'll go to you now, Jason. This is basically a our first episode on this for this show. We're doing a basic wrestling fandom uh, title show. So, who are some of the wrestlers that you liked growing up watching wrestling?
Yeah. My all-time favorite growing up was Roddy Piper. Um, Quick story behind that. He was the biggest heel on TV back in the day. People were scared to death of him. Him and Wahoo McDaniel were feuding in a blood feud over the United States title. And my dad played music on the weekends at the local VFW, so we had a lot of deputies that took turns working the dance, and so we knew them all. And so those same deputies worked the wrestling matches, and they would take me back to meet them. I got to meet a lot of the guys, and it was always funny because the bad guys, heels, whatever you want to call them back then, they were always the nicest guys.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
met Steamboat, I met Tommy Young, I met a lot of the baby faces too, and they weren't rude. I mean, I don't want to come across as they were rude, but they were just like, yeah, here you go, kid, here's your autograph, and move on. But the heels would, they would spend time with you. Like when I met Roddy Piper, he was playing cards with Gene Anderson, who was managing at the time. He had done retired from in-ring competition, but he was managing Snuka and a couple of the other ones. And this was 81, just to date it for you. And they were just the nicest of guys. And that kind of scarred me from, where everybody else was cheering the fan favorites, where I'm the little asshole sitting there cheering for the bad guys. So Piper definitely. And then then moving forward, I was a big Four Horsemen fan. I was a big Midnight Express fan. It's like people talking about the Hall of Fame coming up, and it's like, I mean, I know it's a political thing, it's a money thing. They have to agree to go in. I get all that, but it's like, how can you have a Hall of Fame with the Rock and Roll Express, which they deserve it? Don't get me wrong. And people have no idea how over the Rock and Roll Express was in the '80s with the fans. But how can you have the Rock and Roll right at midnight? Because that feud is what put them on the map as well. So, those were the guys that Tully Blanchard was just a cool heel even before he joined the Four Horsemen as well. So those were the kind of guys that I liked. So yeah, I kind of went the other way. As Jim Cornette would announce the Midnight Express from, I was also from the dark side.
Yeah.
Talking about heels being nicer than the faces, I went to a house show and think about 2015, 2016 WWE And at the time, my favorite wrestler was Seth Rollins. He had just returned from ACL injury. And, you know, the big faces were Roman Reigns. Nobody liked him. They would boo the hell out of him, but that was who they were pushing. And Rollins signed for everybody. But the babyface Roman Reigns was the rudest person you could have ever met. Same as Dean Ambrose, John Moxley. I came across him, and he was the face, and he was the rudest guy you could ever meet. So it does seem like sometimes the heels can be nicer than the faces. But for me, growing up watching wrestling, I said it earlier, Jeff Hardy was always someone, because I only got SmackDown when I was growing up. That's all I got was on Friday night on Fox. Like, that's all I got. And then in the morning times, on Saturday mornings, I would get Memphis wrestling, like old Memphis wrestling, and then sometimes I would get it was the up-to-date Memphis wrestling with what's his name? I forget what his name was, but it was basically a reboot version of Memphis wrestling. But I used to watch like old Memphis wrestling Saturday mornings, like the Moondogs and Jerry Lawler, Kamala, all of them. That was all I got. But growing up, The Undertaker, Jeff Hardy, I actually hated CM Punk. It was a funny story because CM Punk's favorite wrestler now. But he was the reason Jeff Hardy was no longer in WWE. If anyone remembers that steel cage match that they had.
Yeah.
But Jeff Hardy, RVD, The Undertaker, always loved Shawn Michaels, Bret Hart. A lot of those were some of my favorites. I guess I can go back to the past question that we all answered before. How did you get into wrestling, Jason?
Well, I grew up in a very small southern town. And, you know, like I said, there wasn't a lot to do. You know, growing up, I played sports. And like I said, my dad played music, so I was very involved in music. And the wrestling matches came through once a month. And, you know, being down there, we actually got damn near every territory there was. Roddy Piper was actually the reason I started watching WWF years ago. You know, because like I say, he was, you know, once I met him, he became my favorite. And you know, when your guys are gone, and I just happened to be flipping through and caught it at the right time. Piper came out with Paul Orndorff, you know, as his new mouthpiece. And I was like, oh, that's where he went. Okay, I'll leave it right here. But I mean, I got Florida Championship Wrestling. I got Georgia. I got Continental. I got Mid-South. There was a show that came on for a little while called Pro Wrestling This Week that would come on with Joe Pedicino and Gordon Soley that would come on Saturday nights. And if you, I'll date myself for you. George Michael had this thing, not the singer. There was a sportscaster named George Michael, and he had a show on Saturday nights as well called the George Michael Sports Machine that would actually show highlights as well. And it was on one of the major networks. I want to say it was NBC, but it could have been ABC or CBS, but it would come on late Saturday night, and I would watch that as well. So, you know, that's what I went back and forth watching. You know, I watched, like I said, I watched a lot of sports. I'd watch Braves baseball, of course, football's on Sunday, and then the Monday night baseball and the Monday night football, because, you know, it was not what it is now. You didn't have all the different packages to watch your team. So growing up a Yankee fan, I also fell in love with Dale Murphy as watching the Braves all the time on TBS. But like I said, they just came once a month, and that was my Saturday mornings. I'd wake up, eat breakfast, and watch a couple of cartoons. And at 10 o'clock, we started rolling with World Class Championship Wrestling, and went to about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, got a little bit of a break. Then the world famous 605 show would come on, and then you get another break. And then
Superstation.
Then from 11:30, there's Worldwide would come on, then you get the Pro Wrestling This Week, and then that George Michael Sports Machine. So I'd be up till 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning on Saturday nights watching that stuff.
Yeah, I wish I could have lived through a lot of that. Every time someone asks me what is one moment in wrestling history that you wish you could have just get in a time machine and go back to, I always wanted to see Andre the Giant. I always wanted to be up close and watch one of his matches. And if anyone who hasn't watched the Andre the Giant documentary, that's a very great watch. And if anyone doesn't know who his best friend was, I never would have thought who would have been his best friend, but referee Tim White.
Tim White, that was his best friend and his handler.
That's not someone I would have thought that would have been his best friend, but so my next question for you, Mr. Jacobs, is who are some of the wrestlers that you've met, and who are some of the nicest, maybe some of the rudest?
Let's see. I think probably one of the nicest wrestlers I've ever met was JTG from Crime Time. If anyone remembers Crime Time from Raw from back in the day, the tag team. Uh, yeah, he was probably one of the nicest, probably one of the nicest, sweetest wrestlers I've ever met. We had a conversation, took a picture. I mean, he was real personable. It's like there's some wrestlers out there that are very approachable. And then there are some that you're like, okay, maybe I shouldn't go near this guy. But like JTG was like one of those dudes where like you can just, you can walk up to him and just say, "What's up, man? What's going on? How you doing?" And like you can talk like you talk to him like you're talking to a friend. You know, that's probably one of the kindest people I've met. I haven't really had any bad run-ins with any wrestlers, thank God. Not yet, at least. But I haven't really had any run-ins. But I mean, but wrestlers that I don't like. So, but yeah, it's probably one of the kindest wrestlers I've ever met was JTG.
For me, I've met a lot of wrestlers. Uh, One of the nicest wrestlers I've ever met, and a lot of people doesn't like his in-ring work. I don't really, but he is one of the nicest wrestlers that you can ever meet. But it's Goldberg. Uh, I've told this story a few times on here. Uh, Me and my uncle and grandmother, we went to when WrestleMania was in New Orleans. I believe that was the one where it was Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns,
Yeah.
34, I believe. Uh, but we had only purchased one autograph and one picture. Unfortunately, we were going to go back and buy some more, but they had sold out. But we got in line, and I was just going to get my stuff signed, and we were going to get a picture together. But Goldberg signed 3 stuff for us that we didn't pay for, and he took a picture with each of us that we didn't even pay for either. So he didn't do that to anyone else but us. Uh, I know a lot of people don't like his in-ring work, but he is one of the nicest wrestlers I've ever come across. Uh, the rudest, if anyone knows who Titus O'Neil is, he is one of the rudest wrestlers
Yeah,
that you can
yeah.
probably meet. I know he got the Warrior Award, and they praise him like he's the nicest wrestler on earth, but he is not. Uh, I don't want to. I might as well tell the story. We went to
Go ahead,
WrestleMania
dude.
in Orlando, Florida, in WrestleMania 33, the year before. Me and my uncle's handicapped. He's in a wheelchair. So at WrestleMania Access, they had the disability line. They had the regular line and the disability line. So every 30 minutes, they would have the wrestler come down from the stage they were at to take pictures with the people who have a disability that can't, maybe who are in a wheelchair or can't, get up on the stage where to meet them. And then I always
Yeah.
remember this. It was time for Tyson O'Neil to come down. He said, "Do I really have to come down there?" And then everybody heard him. At that
Damn.
point, I didn't want to meet him anymore. But I've heard a lot of experiences like that from different people who's met Tyson. uh, but what about you, Jason? Who is some of the wrestlers that you've met? I know
I've met plenty over the years. As a kid, like I said, all those were met backstage. But DJing for umpteen years, especially in the strip clubs back in the day, I met a ton of them. Most of them I met were very nice. The Undertaker was just you say talk to JTG like he would just talk to you like a friend. I mean, that's what the Undertaker talked to you like. He was just, hey man, what's happening? It was very,
Yeah.
I had gotten to that stage in my life though to where I refused to ask another man for his autograph, and I made my
Right.
wife go over there and ask, like, here, don't tell him it's for me, just go give him a sign. And because he was sitting at a
You get
table
the
after
missus to
that.
do it.
And but years ago, like during the "Don't Piss Me Off" gimmick, Jeff Jarrett and one of the Godwins, Dennis Knight, I forgot which Godwin he was. I want to say he was Phineas. But him, Jeff Jarrett, and I don't know if you remember this guy or not. He was a security guard. He was short, but he was stocky and always wore the black cap backwards. His name was Jim. They come in on a Thursday night, and I was out. A buddy of mine that was working the door. He goes, "Hey, you watch wrestling, right?" I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, "Those 3 guys over there say they were wrestlers, and if you ever been in a strip club, they're very dark." And I'm like, it's probably just state fair guys. I guess that's in town. He's like, "No, they said WWF." I'm like, well, the WWF's in town Saturday. It don't make any sense for them to be here now. But I walk over and look in a minute, And I walked over there. I said, I'd be damn, that's Jeff Jarrett. And I talked to him for a second. And then at the end of the night, we'd already made last call. And Jarrett walked over there and he's like, hey, man, can you get us another beer? They won't give us one. And I said, you got to have it done by the time I call pickup because ain't nobody trying to fight the three. And he kind of giggled. He said, well, trust me, we'll get them done. And so I went and got him 3 beers and, true to his word, they guzzled him. Then he come over and he's like, hey, man, is there anywhere we can keep drinking? I'm like, there's an after hours bar downtown, but you got to be a member. And he said, are you a member? And before I thought, I said, yeah. I said, hell, I see where this is going. And so I took the 3 of them down. I took the 3 of them down to the after hours bar and sit there and talk to Jarrett. They came back in on Friday, took them back to the after hours bar, sit there and talk to Jarrett for a long time. Then Saturday was the show. And man, it was like 15 of them that came in. Kurgan was one. That was a big dude. X-Pac, Shawn Michaels. Yeah. Shawn Michaels. And I got Shawn Michaels autograph that weekend. Like I said, it was about 15 of them. And I was sitting at the bar because that's when Jeff Jarrett's first wife was battling cancer. And he honestly just seemed like he needed somebody to talk to. And we were sitting there talking, and my wife was standing next to me, and Dennis Knight like motioned. And I thought he was calling her. And I said, hey, he wants you. And so she goes walking over there and she comes back with this dejected look on her face. I'm like, what's wrong? What did he say? She goes, he wants to talk to you. I'm like, oh, okay. So I went over there and he's just very nice. He thanked me for getting him in the last 3 nights at the after hours bar, thanked me for, hanging out with him. And, Shawn Michaels was blitzed out of his mind. He was actually in the back of the club getting a lap dance from one of the girls that I worked with in the after hours bar, which shouldn't have been happening, but it was. And, like I said, Jeff, I stood up next to the Big Show after the first Nitro across the street at a Marriott because I went over there to have a drink and try to let the traffic die down. And as soon as we walked in, the first 3 people we saw was Tony Schiavone, Bobby Heenan, and Doug Dillinger. I'm like, oh, this might get interesting. And the Big Show walked in and he stopped by our table and I said, hey, man, don't want your autograph. I ain't trying to bother you. I just want to stand up next to you. Is that all right? And he's like, yeah, I'm looking for somebody. I stood up next to him. I'm 6'2". And I came right up underneath his pec. And I'm like, good Lord, that is the biggest human being I've ever seen. His thigh was bigger than my entire body. And I am 6. I mean, I ain't the biggest guy, but I am 6'2", 245. And like I said, his thigh was bigger around in my entire body. And Flair, just to go back when I was little, we were pulling up to one of the shows at the high school, and looking back on it as an adult, he was being an ass, but I didn't know that then. I asked him for his autograph, and he said, I'm running late, kid. Catch me after the show. Well, I never called him after the show. And he was standing over at the bar. The bar was packed with wrestlers and fans. And I heard him telling some people that, hey, leave me alone. It's downtime. And I sat there and thought about it for a minute. And I said, well, I ain't never going to see this man again. So I walked over to him and I didn't bother him. I waited for him to turn around. And when we made eye contact, I said, excuse me, sir, I heard you say this was downtime. I understand that. I respect that, but you owe me an autograph. And he looked at me and he kind of looked me up and down. He goes, I owe you an autograph. And then I told him the story and his whole demeanor changed. And he was like, you got a good memory, kid. I said, you the man, brother. And he signed the program where his picture was at. And he goes, did you come over here to get a drink or just my autograph? I said, both. And he said, put whatever he wants on my tab. Now, I don't know if he paid it or not, but I got back to my table and they're like, did he buy you a drink? And I had a beer and a shot. I'm like, no, he bought me 2 and signed my book. So, but as far as all the ones I met, Piper was really nice to me as a kid, but as an adult, Jeff Jarrett was amazing to sit there and talk to for 3 days.
Wow. That's amazing.
I went to a similar bar thing like that. It was at Jerry Lawler's Bar and Grill here in Memphis, Tennessee on Bill Street. After Raw was over, this was a sad day and a good day for me because my dad made me leave early. But there's a lot of wrestlers down there. Like this was when 2016, when they had just started the brand split back up. But Chris Jericho was there. Who else was there? Seth Rollins was there. Kevin Owens was there. Mark Henry was there. I seen Mark Henry eat like 6 things of banana pudding. And golly, I got his autograph. He was at first. I asked for his autograph, and he didn't say anything. I feel like he was in his character, but I literally sat there and just watched this man eat 6 or 7, maybe 8 things of banana pudding. He wouldn't stop. But I really wanted to meet Jericho, but that did not happen. But Yeah, if anyone gets a chance to go to Jerry Lawler's Bar and Grill, it's a nice his story in wrestling place. You got a lot of memorabilia and stuff there.
Yeah, Memphis is a place I'd like to visit. I'd like to see there, and I'd love to see. I'd like to go at Christmas time. I'd love to see Graceland all lit up in lights for Christmas.
Yeah, I was gonna go today, but they were gonna have a wrestling event at the outside the Mid South Coliseum, where Memphis Wrestling was at, to save that. They've been doing this for years, trying to save the Coliseum, but at this point, I don't know what they're gonna do with it. I hate to say it, it might be best just to knock it down, but
I heard there was a group that wants to come in and buy it and restore it.
Yeah, there's been a lot of things that they've wanted to do. Maybe make it into a museum, or maybe open it back up to have events there. I was there one time. I was like 2 or 3 years old, and apparently I went to a wrestling show. I don't remember a thing of it, but yeah, Memphis is definitely a history wrestling place, especially going to Jerry Lawler's Bar and Grill. It's there's a lot of old AWA memorabilia there. Jerry Lawler owns a lot of memorabilia from WWE, not just of himself. I've always enjoyed going there. He used to have all kinds of wrestlers come by, not even for shows. Like Mick Foley came by there one time. One time they had like Jim Cornette, Rock and Roll Express, Bobby Eaton. Like there was a bunch of them. Jimmy Valiant. Like there was a bunch of them that came down there. But yeah, Mr. Jacobs, I know you've been to a lot of wrestling events. I know the biggest one here recently was WrestleMania 38, I believe.
Yeah.
So what has been one of your favorite wrestling events to attend? And do you have any stories of any fans or any interactions with wrestlers or anything?
Well, I'm gonna start off by saying this. I do have a story, but about a bad interaction. But it happened to a buddy of mine. But I think it's hilarious. You might have heard of him out there, Vian Fuso, the social justice warrior. He can tell the story better than I could. But he was once a Bret Hart fan, and I think Bret Hart was one of his favorite wrestlers growing up, and he actually got a chance to meet him. And when he finally got to meet him, and Bret started signing his autograph, he mentioned Shawn Michaels, and he said, "Yeah, I know Shawn Michaels," and we didn't know if he meant that he knew Shawn personally or what. But this is what V says. I mean, I think he can tell the story better. But he said that Bret Hart put his pen down and said, "Hey, well, next time you see him, give him this for me." And Bret Hart flips him off. A kid flips him off and says, "Hey, give this to Shawn next time you see him." so yeah, that gives you an idea of how Bret was to some fans. But I think one of my best memories from going to a show was probably the WrestleMania that was in the last WrestleMania that was in Dallas. I forget which number it was, but
I think it was 38. When
30. Yeah, that's when it was Austin and Owens that when they had their brawl, and that was probably some of the that was a great show to go to because it was for both nights, and I mean if you've never been to a WrestleMania, I highly recommend it. I mean, it's pretty much a huge party that just has it's like a huge party that has wrestling in the middle of it, and the experience, the backstage access. I mean, the not the backstage, but the all access stuff, and I mean that's all a part of it. And I think as a fan, if you can afford it, I highly recommend going to a WrestleMania. My personal goal is to go to a SummerSlam. I know you've been to one. I mean, I've always wanted to go to a SummerSlam, but I think for me, house shows are always really fun to go to too because you get to see. The wrestlers they're not on script. They get to be loose and they get to be funny. They get to be more interactive with the crowd, and I love to see that. So yeah, I mean that's to me. I think the last WrestleMania that I went to was probably one of the best experiences I ever had in my life.
Speaking of house shows, tell the story some, but to some who may not know, this was a house show maybe in 2006, 7, or 8. It was when Jericho was feuding with Rey Mysterio. I still remember this to this day. I had a sign, Jericho was a heel. It said Jericho was a jerk. and somehow my grandmother got us front row seats. I don't remember how she got us front row seats because this was like 2008. Maybe they weren't as expensive as they were today. But Jericho came by, and I had a sign, Jericho was a jerk. And I still remember to this day, he said, "You would think I'm a jerk, Junior." I will always remember that to this day. I want to meet Jericho and tell him that story. I went to a TNA house show when TNA used to run house shows. I met AJ Styles. That was a moment I'll never forget. It was me, my uncle, my grandmother, and two friends that met AJ Styles, and it was like going to be like $200. But from my memory, someone in front of us paid for us to meet AJ Styles, and we never knew who it was. But to this day, we never knew who it was. But we got to meet AJ Styles because whoever was in front row, whoever was in front of us, apparently paid for us to meet AJ Styles. And that was a very cool experience. I've always wanted to meet AJ Styles again to show him that photo. I was like 6 or 7, and that was the time when he was the TNA World Champion, not the NWA. It's when they finally had the TNA World Title. But yeah, Jason, is there any wrestling events that you've been to that you've always remembered? Kind of like Mr. Jacobs going to WrestleMania.
Oh yeah, and you talk about a couple of things I'd like to do. You know, Vegas and WrestleMania are both on my bucket list, and I'd love to be able to afford to go this coming year. But unless I hit the lottery, that's out of the equation. You know, and two places I always wanted to go before, you know, they closed them down, and maybe they'll reopen the Memphis Coliseum. But growing up, you know, I always wanted to, I wanted to go to the Sportatorium in the Memphis Coliseum to see big shows at both of them. But it goes back to where you and I could cross paths in person, Connor. That'd be the Greensboro Coliseum, but it wasn't for the AEW Sting's retirement, even though that was memorable. You know, I've told you before, 1983. I was sitting in the nosebleed section, but I was there for Starrcade 83. I got to see the Piper Valentine dog collar match. You know, of course, Ricky Steamboat and Jay Youngblood against the Briscoes. The old Briscoes, and look them up if anybody don't know who they were.
The old ones, yeah, the originals.
Jack Briscoe, former NWA World Champion, Jerry Briscoe, light heavyweight champion, and both legit badasses that could tie you up in a knot within a second. Tell you a story about them in a second. But I got to see Ric Flair beat Harley Race in the cage. And talk about the Briscoes.
That's awesome.
You know, when they were heels fighting Ricky Steamboat and Jay Youngblood, I mean, they were nasty. And again, they were legit badasses. And on one of the shows that we went to, one of the house shows at the high school gym, we come out, we were leaving, and somebody had slashed all 4 of their tires. And me being a kid, you know, I didn't have any concept of what was happening. I wanted the damn autograph. And
right.
I go trotting over to Jerry Briscoe. I'm like, "Excuse me, sir, may I have your autograph?" And my mom's like, "Jason, get over here." And God bless Jerry Briscoe. He looked right at her and said, "Ma'am, he's fine. It ain't like we're going anywhere anytime soon." And looking back on that as an adult, I just have to laugh because, like, I was 7, 8 years old. And I'm like, "Can I have your autograph?" My mom's like, "Get over here. He's busy." And I'm like, and he's like, "Man, we're not going anywhere. He's fine."
Damn.
Yeah, when I was when I was a part of a booking team, there's a lot of wrestlers who used to ride together. I remember seeing like 15 guys fitting in a big van. And, like, I don't know how in the hell they fit everybody in there, but like that's what a lot of people do to this day, and they did back then to save on cost.
Yep.
Even some WWE guys do it too. I don't know if AEW guys do it or not, because when we talked to Bryce Remsburg, he's an AEW referee. He's also part of like booking hotels and stuff like that. They cover everything. So I don't know how they go about that, but a lot of independent wrestlers do that to this day. I never came across someone that got their tires slashed, but I have seen them run out of gas and be stuck like 2 hours away from the show.
I got a gas station story for you when you're done.
Oh no, you can go ahead.
Well, like I said, Martinsville was small, still is. It ain't like it's grown any, but I don't remember why we'd stopped, but we'd stopped at the Hop In. That'll date it for you if anybody knows what a Hop In is. And we'd stopped at the Hop In for some odd reason. And Ivan Koloff, and I remember all 3 of them that pulled up to get gas. It was Ivan Koloff, a very young Jake, not the Snake Roberts yet, and this mid carder named Ali Bey, a little short, shorter version of Abdullah the Butcher kind of looking guy. And me being a kid, I go hauling ass over there. Hey, what's up, man? And Ivan Koloff was just as nice as he could be. It was me, my mom, my grandma. And I was like, can I come with y'all? And he looks right at my grandma with this big grin on his face. As long as you bring her with you. And I'm like, dude, what is wrong with you? That is my grandmother you're talking about. He's like, yeah, but she's hot. I'm like, or pretty, whatever the hell it was. He said, I'm like, dude, what is wrong with you? And I mean, but he was just so nice and laughing. He's like, and I, as they're getting ready to get back in the car and leave. He's like, y'all coming or not? I'm like, really? But they were just as nice as they could be.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I've met a lot of wrestlers outside of like a meet and greet or anything like designed to be a meet and greet. Here recently, like last year, I was at Cracker Barrel. No, I wasn't at Cracker Barrel. I was at Piccadilly. If anyone knows what that is.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
It wasn't here recently. I should take that back. It was in New Orleans, WrestleMania. I went to the restroom and I came out. And then first thing I'm looking at is Hacksaw Jim Duggan. Just having a meal with his wife. I was too afraid to go up and ask because I know some wrestlers don't like to be bothered while they're eating and stuff. But I was with my grandmother and she insisted. And I was kind of like you, Jason. I don't want anything to do with it. I don't want to get involved in it. But he was fine taking a picture with us. And like he was very nice. I met Hacksaw Jim Duggan twice, and he was very, very nice both times. And I met him the next day and actually paid to meet him, get his autograph and stuff. But I met Powerhouse Hobbs at Cracker Barrel last year. Same situation, because you don't want to disturb wrestlers while they're eating or stuff like that. Because there is some wrestlers I know that's like Shawn Michaels. I've always heard that he's one of the rudest wrestlers you can meet. This from past fans that I've heard from. Like he told the kid.
Yeah, I think from back in the day, he was pretty rude.
Well, this was like in like WrestleMania 33-ish. He was at like a bar or whatever, and a kid, like he's like maybe 6 or 7, asked for his autograph, and he told the kid, "Tell your dad to pay my bill, and then I'll take a picture with you."
Whoa!
I've heard that he's yelled at kids and stuff like that. That's other people's experience. I would like to meet Shawn Michaels myself to really judge that because
right,
we'll have different experiences with wrestlers. But do you have any experiences meeting wrestlers out of a destination area, Mr. Jacobs?
I mean, not out of just anywhere. I mean, I can remember as a kid going to a monster truck show, and the Undertaker just showed up out of nowhere. I remember that. That was pretty cool. And that's back when he had the there was also a monster truck named after him too. And I'm not sure if he was there because of that or what, but I know that he was. All I know is he showed up and all the kids went nuts. They lost their minds. And I mean, you can imagine, I mean, these huge dude towering over a bunch of kids, and they're all screaming and like, yeah, it's Undertaker. I mean, it was awesome. Honestly speaking, it was pretty cool. And he was just acting like you were just walking through, walking through the show, just wanting to see what's going on. And he just called him Fandom, Fandom on him. He didn't know what was going on. Now the kids, adults were going crazy too, and it was nuts because it wasn't like a formal meet and greet. He just showed up. You know what I mean? From what I remember, he just showed up, and everybody lost their minds. It was pretty awesome.
Yeah, I've met a handful of wrestlers outside of just out of nowhere. We got a lot of comments when we read some of these. Sean Lee, thanks for watching. Been watching since 1992. I know you haven't been watching.
Year I graduated.
I know you haven't been watching this podcast since 1992, but Johnson Wayne, thanks for watching.
Hold on, go back to the last comment.
This one.
Yeah. Hi guys. Hi.
I love HBK. I like the Undertaker as well. I love Piper.
Yeah.
I recently met Jeff Jarrett.
I'm not gonna lie to you. When Piper died, I did shed a couple of tears.
Yeah, he died in like 2015, 16, 14 maybe.
Mhm.
I think he died like around the same time Ultimate Warrior died. I could be wrong. Uh, who are your favorite Memphis wrestlers? So, of course, everyone would say Jerry King Lawler. That's just what a lot of people would say. But I liked
That's the
maybe
default.
yeah, everyone would say Jerry Lawler, but I personally liked Bill Dundee a lot. Uh, I actually seen him wrestle like maybe 3 months ago. He still wrestles to this day. I don't know how, but some way, somehow, this man still wrestles. Uh,
Yeah.
I used to like watching the Moondogs, uh, Jimmy Valiant in his prime. Uh,
The boy from New York City,
Doug Gilbert was good. I
the
like
Dark Patriot.
I like the at Jerry Lawler's Bar and Grill. They have TVs, and I just watched this whole thing of the story of Jerry Lawler and Andy Kaufman. That was a pretty interesting.
Now, see, I was a kid for that, but I was watching the David Letterman show live when that happened.
Yeah,
It was wild.
Yeah,
Hmm.
that was pretty fun 'cause at that time. Like Memphis wrestling, a lot of people would say that that was the place to be. Uh, like if you were gonna make it big, you had to go through Memphis.
Well,
Uh,
that's where the Midnight Express
Yeah.
got their start. So,
yeah,
I love both. I thought Lane and Eaton were a better tag team, but I like both incarnations of the Midnight Express. So,
I know a lot of big names started out in Memphis. Kurt Angle, The Rock, Hulk Hogan.
don't forget the Junkyard Dog. That's where Sylvester got his start.
Yeah, Junkyard Dog. There's a
Oh
lot
yeah,
of people.
JYD.
Uh, Hulk Hogan came through Memphis. The Undertaker came through Memphis. There's a lot of people.
Undertaker actually got his start in World Class as Texas Red under a mask.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's true.
And then what I was talking earlier, like the reboot of Memphis Wrestling, I thought I finally remembered his name, but his name was Corey Macklin. Him and Jerry Lawler kind of, I guess, rebooted it or whatever, tried to make their own spin of the Memphis Wrestling. They used to get a lot of WWE guys in the beginning. They got Viscera.
Yeah, I saw a clip from not too long ago that had Buff Bagwell and somebody on there as the tag champs.
Yeah, Buff Bagwell still wrestles. Last time I seen him wrestle was in Nashville, Tennessee, before they knocked it down, the Nashville Fairgrounds. I can't remember who. I think he wrestled Johnny Swinger that night. I can't. It was a promotion called Freedom Pro Wrestling. They used to run at the Nashville Fairgrounds. Memphis Wrestling. There's a lot of good wrestlers I liked. Austin Idol was a good one. He didn't start in Memphis, but he came through Memphis quite a bit.
I think he would when he I forgot what he wrestled by. I think it was he wrestled by his real name and then came through Memphis as Austin Idol as when he got his start as Austin Idol. I mean, he'd been wrestling as his real name, but just not making anything. But then started doing the whole superstar Billy Graham gimmick, which a lot of people tried to steal. Hulk Hogan included, Jesse Ventura. So
yeah, I always want to go to a wrestling event in the Mid-South Coliseum. I don't know if that'll ever happen, but I got a lot of old Memphis wrestling tapes I like watching sometimes. A lot of the biggest names started out in Memphis. I met Jay the Snake. I met Jake Roberts when I was 12, and he was really nice. It was in Melbourne, Australia. Wow, that was a long time ago. It had to been.
now, here's an interesting story about Memphis wrestling. Johnny Walker was wrestling as Johnny Walker in Memphis wrestling. He was young. He was 29, 30, 31, somewhere around there. But he was balding already, kind of like Arn Anderson. He looked like he was 50 when he was 30.
Mm-hmm.
And Bill Watts just thought he was boring, didn't see anything in him, so he fired him. Well, Johnny Walker went and created the Mr. Wrestling 2 gimmick. And when Bill Watts heard about this guy, Mr. Wrestling 2, called him and brought him back into Memphis. And he was back in Memphis for 6 to 8 months before Bill Watts realized it was the guy he had fired.
Oh, well, I wonder what he thought when he finally realized.
And Johnny Walker's wife was Olivia Walker, who made Flair's robes and a lot of other people's.
Oh, wow. Really cool.
That's cool.
I've been to the Mid-South Collision, I guess Mid-South Coliseum, some back in the day, years ago. That's awesome, Jason. Hey, gentlemen, thanks for watching, Davis. We're coming close to the hour mark. I only want to make the show at least an hour. But yeah, it was great to hear a lot of our wrestling experiences of past stories of wrestlers we've met, wrestlers we've wanted to meet, stories of how we got into wrestling. Uh, yeah, is there any stories that anyone wants to tell before we close out?
Yeah, the only thing I'll say is like, it's, like I won't justify Shawn Michaels saying what he said, because Shawn Michaels has been making millions of dollars a year for a long time. But,
Or-
a lot of these guys, like especially some of the retired ones, it's not like it used to be. There's all these Comic-Cons and stuff that they can go to and make money. So, if they're giving away free autographs in restaurants, it's kind of taking money off their table. You talk about Chris Jericho.
Yeah,
My kid does a lot of these Comic-Cons, and he went on the Jericho cruise a couple of years ago, and he said Jericho just stayed blitzed the entire time, but he was fun. So he met him a couple of times. He said he probably didn't remember it, but with the advent of cell phones and cameras and stuff in people's hand, they don't go out like they used to. But it was kind of cool every time they would come in, because they would always come to the strip club, and after I met the Undertaker the first time, the next 3 or 4 times he come in, because the bathroom was right there close to the DJ booth, he'd always stop. Hey man, how you been? I'm like, you remember me? Yeah, man, we talked for like 10 minutes last time I was here. I'm like, oh,
yeah,
cool. He was honest. He said, I don't remember your name, but I remember you. I'm like, all right, man, I appreciate you. But got to meet the Godfather, Ken Shamrock, um, countless others that come through those doors. And like I said, they don't really want to do it anymore. They're not allowed to do it because everybody's taking pictures of them drinking or doing whatever they want to do. So it kind of ruins their fun. I wouldn't mind the money, but I would not want the fame. I would not want to not be able to go to a mall or to, dinner or breakfast or a movie or something and get mobbed by 50 or 60 people. It would drive me crazy.
yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
A lot of people always say they want to be famous, but when the reality sets in and you're actually famous, and it's kind of like Andre the Giant, he couldn't go anywhere. Uh, I
You
mean,
see a lot of the famous ones. I mean, Andre was one. And I mean, his family still owns that ranch he had. I think it was in North Carolina, but Steve Austin, off the top of my head, a lot of them, if they've got that kind of money, they go out there and build them something secluded on a lot of property that's not close to anybody. Brock Lesnar, they said the
Yeah,
reason he moved to Canada was when he was in Minnesota, his closest neighbor was 6 miles, and he thought that was too close, so he went out and bought a bunch of property in Canada. So,
yeah, 6 months.
must be nice.
There's a lot of wrestlers that you hear that move far out, especially Brock Lesnar. I remember in the interview with Stone Cold, Steve Austin, he was saying he's got a gate around his house, lives in the middle of nowhere, which I can understand that for some wrestlers. Like, you don't want wrestlers to find out. I mean, fans to find out where you live.
Hmm.
Uh, they're, Chris Benoit's old house. Like, fans still go to that house. If you go on YouTube and look it up, like, people
Yeah.
just live there.
yeah,
And,
one of the stories that Paul Lee told in the interview about Brock Lesnar after he'd moved to Canada, he said, "Look, man," he goes, "y'all think this is all bullshit." He goes, "It's not." He goes, "Brock does not like people." He goes, "Hell, I don't even know if he likes me or
No,
not."
he hates people.
He said, "Brock does not have a phone." He said, "Brock has a cell phone that he takes with him when he leaves his property." He said, "But when he's home, it's turned off. It's in his wrestling bag. That's the only time he takes it out." He said, "Brock has a payphone at the end of his driveway, which is 3 miles away from his house." He
yeah,
goes, "If Brock feels the need that he needs to talk to you, that he cannot, get across what he's trying to get across in an email, he will email you a time to call that phone. And he will make sure he's by that phone when it rings. And if it doesn't ring and you miss the call or the time he's there, too bad. He's not going back for another week or two."
yeah. Yeah, I've always heard that he does not like people. I remember there's a video of him and Sable, uh, like at an airport. He just ignored everybody that came up to him. Like he acted like they were non-existent. Uh,
That poor daughter of his. I mean, I know she's good in sports, but God, who would want to be female and look just like Brock Lesnar? Oh, I mean, I wouldn't fight her either. I mean, I've seen her go, and she's tough, but it's like, oh, you poor child.
yeah, she definitely looks like Brock Lesnar in the face. Maybe does he just have one daughter?
I think him and Sable have a couple of kids together as well, but this is his oldest one from the relationship before Sable.
Yeah, I would like to see him have a son to see what he would look like. But Yeah, she's in the volleyball, I believe, because he would go to some of her games. I think it was volleyball or basketball that he would go to see some of her games. Sean, what CM Punk? Uh, yeah, I met CM Punk during SummerSlam this year. He was very nice. Uh, he, they wanted people to rush out of there, but he talked to me and my uncle for like 7 minutes. So he was very, very nice. Didn't rush you or anything. Which wrestlers have you each met? Jason said a lot of people that he's met.
And I did meet the Rock and Roll Express in the early and mid '90s when they were coming around after their heyday. They were doing shows at Chesterfield County Fairgrounds, and I did some announcing and stuff at, and they were, they were both of them very nice. Sitting there talking to Robert Gibson, and this kid's like in the ring, little skinny kid, like I'm about twice his size. And I looked at Robert and I kind of giggled. I'm like, who's this little dude in the ring? He's like, oh man, that's my number one student. I'm like, okay, open mouth, insert foot.
Yeah, I met Rock and Roll Express a few times. I met them individually and some together uh, at a show where Bill Dundee was at. The Rock and Roll Express was at, well, not both of them, but Robert Gibson was there.
Give you a funny Ricky Morton story here. They a buddy of mine wrestled for a little while for Maryland Championship Wrestling, if you've ever heard of that, MCW. And he's like, they were having a show to they were giving Bobby Eaton some kind of award, and he's like, hey, you want to go? I'm like, sure, I'll go. And we get down there, and he's introduced me to some people, and Ricky Morton, I don't know if he was bullshitting or not, but he was like, yeah, man, I remember you. I've met you a few times. I'm like, yeah, you have. And like, whether he was remember me or not, it doesn't matter. But I'm sitting there, talking to him at his gimmick table, and he follows me outside. He had somebody sitting there and asked me for a cigarette. And I was like, really? Okay, here you go. And then we go back inside. It wasn't 30, 45 minutes later. I wasn't at his table, but I wasn't far. And he comes over and taps me on the shoulder. He's like, hey, man, can you keep an eye on my table for a minute? I'm like, everything all right? He's like, I just got to go outside and do a bump real quick. I'll be right back. I'm like, oh, dear God. Okay. All right. You go do your thing, man. I'm like, do I get any of the profits? He just kind of giggles. I'll be right back. I'm like, all right.
Yeah. To answer your question, Jesse, I've met a lot of wrestlers. I've met some of them already said, but one that I wanted to meet was Terry Funk, but he passed away this year. I did get the pleasure of meeting Harley Race at his promotion. It was in Georgia. His son wrestles too. I forget what his son's name was, but I got to meet Harley Race. I got to see Terry Funk wrestle in his last match ever, though. I was really pissed to get to meet him that night. The promoter was Burt Prentice. If anyone knows who that is. He said there was going to be meet and greet for Terry Funk. Never happened, but I was at least glad that I got to see Terry Funk's final match ever. It was against Jerry Lawler. I got some of the pictures still from that match. The finish was Jerry Lawler using a fireball and beating Terry Funk. Terry Funk was a bloody mess that night. Mr. Jacobs having a little technical difficulties, but we're almost to the hour mark. I want to thank everyone for joining us. I want to thank you, Jason, for joining us. I want to thank Mr. Jacobs for joining us. And everyone that watched, thank you all for watching. We will be back every Saturday for the Pod Champs. Next week's topic will be the pros and cons of AEW. And then the next week will be the pros and cons of WWE. We've got a lot of topics already planned out for this show. And we got close to like 30 topics already planned out for this show, the Pod Champs. We will be having new guests coming on week by week. We've scheduled different people to come different times to have different special guests each time on the show. I want to thank Jason for coming on last minute.
Yep, I just got home from the pumpkin patch.
Yeah, I seen it on Facebook. You were with your family.
Yeah, we were out gallivanting today.
But thank you for joining us last minute. Emily, who is on the All Elite Zone, she'll be with us next Saturday. We had some time zone difficulties, I guess you'd say. But each week, as I said, we'll have different special guests on here with different people to freshen things up. I want to thank Mr. Jacobs. Me and him put this together, the Pod Champs. We've been brainstorming ideas about a new show on the Wide World of Wrestling podcast. But yeah, definitely go check out the Wide World of Wrestling's Facebook and Twitter account. We post all of our updates on there for interviews, show updates, all types of wrestling news stuff on Facebook and Twitter. Definitely subscribe here. We're almost to 1,200 subscribers, I believe. This channel is my personal channel. I rebranded it into the Wide World of Wrestling podcast. That's why we have a little bit of an edge over the All Elite Zone, but definitely go check out the All Elite Zone as well. That is the sister channel to this channel. We do weekly AEW Dynamite live reactions. We have not talking anymore, but we will be having a new show. I'm so used to saying Talking Elite. We have AZ Canada on Tuesdays. We have AZ Dailies on our YouTube account, and we post them also on TikTok. Definitely go check out the All Elite Zone. All of that will be in the link in the description below. Yeah, is there anything you want to add before we sign off, Jason?
Just that coming soon to the All Elite Zone will be WrestleZone Unfiltered on Thursday evenings. We'll hopefully within a couple of weeks get that up and running. So definitely check that out and join him here on the Pod Champs. He said every Saturday night. So follow us everywhere, man, and support us all.
Yes, it's 2 different channels, but it's based 2 different sister channels. It's
one big happy family.
Yeah, pretty much. The Pod Champs will be exclusively on the Wide World of Wrestling podcast. This is our first show exclusively on here besides live reactions. So I want to thank Mr. Jacobs for helping me come up with this show. But yeah, we will see you guys next Saturday for episode 2 of the Pod Champs.